Hello and welcome back to Loftside Bantr. This is your host, Andrew Diamond Thomas. And today we got a whole lot of NFL talk to go over today. Player report cards that came out for each franchise. We're going to go through, see which teams did really well, and then we're going to look at the bottom end of the rankings and see which teams scored very poorly. My team, the New England Patriots, not very happy where they are on the list. Also featuring during this NFL episode, we're going to talk about the NFL Combine, which is going on right now. And then we're going to talk about the actual NFL draft. We're going to make some predictions of where people are going to go in the draft. We do have a lot to get into, so we're going to get started fairly quickly here. We're going to get it right into the NFL report cards. So nearly 1,700 players were surveyed this year for the NFL report cards. Now, this is something that can really be interesting to look at because it can show where your team is. It can show what needs to be improved. And actually, a lot of the stuff is very surprising to me. So we're going to go through a lot of the teams. I'm not going to go through every single team because, one, that would take forever. And two, if you really want to hear my opinion on a specific team that maybe I don't get into, you can just contact us and I'll either set up something or reply to it. We'll figure out a way to get that information to you. First things first, the categories that go into this NFL report card are treatment of families, food and dining area, nutritionist dietitian, locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches, team travel, head coach, and ownership. I believe there's a bunch of subcategories within all of those, so like general managers within the ownership group or maybe the head coach. Team travel, there's a couple of different things. The food and dining area has taste, freshness, stuff like that. So again, we'll get into some of those deeper ones. We'll probably skim over a lot of it. We'll go deeper into the things that are like in the news. Like we'll probably talk a little bit more about the Cowboys ownership. We'll talk about the Patriots in great length. We'll go a little bit more in depth to the top 5, kind of top 10. That middle ground area, we'll make sure that we kind of, again, we'll skim over a little bit. We'll look at some of the stuff that is glaring, and then we'll look at the kind of the back end of it and see where teams are really struggling. Is there any correlation to finishing poorly with bad grades? Is there good teams at the top of the list? Are there teams that are surprisingly good on this list and really bad? It's an interesting read. A lot of the information I gathered from the NFL Players Association website. Again, it's very interesting. Go in depth, look at everything, and it'll kind of give you some ideas of why the teams are heading in the directions that they're heading. I looked up the list. I actually saw it pop up on TikTok when it came out and what the rankings were. So it was definitely really fun to read into all this stuff and to see where teams are sitting, how they're performing, and then how they improve different things. Now, this has come out for like, I think 3 or 4 years now. And there are definitely teams that have made significant improvements in areas that they needed to. There are some that are completely ignoring what they've done. Now, a lot of this can't be done all in 1 year, and we'll get into that deeper when we get into kind of like the Patriots and stuff like that. But, there is just some reports that I read that players don't feel listened to. These are the people that help make your money and provide entertainment and ticket sales and everything else. And if you're not even going to listen to them, it's like any smaller company. It's like any sort of company at all. If you're not listening to your employees, they're not going to respect you, right? So with all that being said, let's go ahead in depth to the list, see who did really well, see who needs a lot of improvements, and see who we can laugh at a little bit. The top team for the second year in a row, as much as it pains me to say this, is the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins went 8-9 last year, were second in the AFC East. They did not make the playoffs. But again, like I mentioned, top team 2 years in a row. They do have a players coach in Mike McDaniel. The players really do seem to like his style, and he seems more human a lot of the times within press conferences where he can joke around and everything else like that. Obviously, being a Patriots fan and seeing Bill Belichick for many years, that's very strange for me. But it is something that we're starting to notice more around the league, is that coaches are becoming a little bit more human. The Dolphins also had the number 1 rated owner within the NFL. Owner Stephen Ross has 9.88 out of 10 rating for willingness to invest in facilities for the players. again, you want to keep these players happy. He's done that. They got a brand new locker room this year, which provides more space. And the players also feel that he's extremely committed to building a competitive team. Ranks first out of 32. Now, again, they didn't make the playoffs this year. They struggled. They had a lot of injuries. But to have all that still in place, at least going forward, it looks like they're going to be set up for next year to at least make a run at the AFC East again. And then hopefully, they'll make the playoffs this year. Number 2 on the list is the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings were 14-3, finished second in the NFC North behind the Detroit Lions. They did make the playoffs. They did lose in that first round. There's some questions going into next year with who their quarterback's going to be, as Sam Darnold is a free agent. And they also do have J.J. McCarthy is coming back from an injury, so he's a rookie that didn't get any playing time. Minnesota was second on last year's list as well, again, so they come in second this year as well. The players overwhelmingly said that family care with activities that they provide, daycare on game days, was the number one thing that they provide within all the different categories. Minnesota Vikings have been the gold standard for treatment of families since these NFL report cards have started coming out. They continue to be at the top, and it shows with a very positive season this year. I don't necessarily think Minnesota Vikings are a destination place to play. Maybe I'm wrong. But if they keep treating families like this, the players are going to talk, and you're going to get better free agents to come in because of some scores like this. I mean, if you're talking about 3 years in a row that they were the number 1 team with treatments of families. The number 3 team has made the biggest improvement since the beginning of these NFL report cards, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. They went 8-9, second in the NFC South. They did not make the playoffs last year. Major upgrades this past offseason has shown a lot of score go up with those training facilities and everything else like that. The new head coach, Raheem Morris, has had positive steps in creating a positive culture. I guess they just weren't getting that from the previous head coach. And they had all A's in just about everything. They had 2 B's. So all A's except for 2 categories. So the previous 2 had all A's. I believe the Dolphins had A pluses for just about everything. But that can kind of show you where the difference is between first and third. 2 B's, basically. Interesting 4th place team, the Las Vegas Raiders. Went 4-13, last in the AFC West last year, did not make the playoffs. They do have state-of-the-art facilities. Players do like Mark Davis, which always seemed to be kind of one of those things in the media that, he's a weird owner. Al Davis was one of those cutthroat, no-nonsense owners. Mark Davis seems to be a little bit more liked than his father. They do feel like the Raiders are a family, as they have always talked about. The biggest things that I've seen with this team is scheduling and time management needs improvement. They seem like that during the week they come in, they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't know where to go, what kind of charities they have to deal with. I guess the communication on that is poor with the Raiders. Pete Carroll has become the new head coach this year, so hopefully that's something that changes with them. Pete Carroll has scored fairly highly with the Seahawks, I believe, in these kind of categories as well. Rounding out the top 5 is the Los Angeles Chargers, who went 11-6, second in the AFC West. Did make the playoffs under the first-year head coach of Jim Harbaugh. They have new training facilities that are in the NFL's top 5 in all the categories. They improved in every category. They had no category scored below a C when they had 6 last year. The 2 biggest concerns that still with this team are travel and scheduling. I really like playing for Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is just one of those football guys. And I'm sure he came in and said that these things need improvements and everything else like that. He went parading around to find the job that he wanted. 55% of the Charger players feel that their head coach Jim Harbaugh is efficient with their time, ranking out of 32 out of 32. So he obviously has some things that he has to improve on with some of the players. Players feel that Jim Harbaugh is moderately receptive to the locker room feedback, which is 26th out of 32. So again, he's an X's and O's guy. He's a guy that really loves the sport and is always at the forefront of the news and everything else like that. But he obviously has that old school mentality with coaches. So we're starting to see those scores go lower and lower and lower. It will be interesting to see if those scores change in his second year. In sixth place, the Houston Texans, 10-7, first in the AFC South, did make the playoffs. Head coach and owner strong scores, D'Amico Ryans, players coach. Food scores, dietitians, among the best in the league. The one criticism the Texans had, they want a sauna. I want a sauna. So if they would like to, if they can get a 2-for-1, they can send one to me. I think that's it's an NFL player, you have to have a voice, you have to say things. I think it's a very specific thing for Houston to have, but I mean, it is what it is. They want a sauna. Next on the list, the Green Bay Packers. They went 11-6, third in the NFC North. Again, NFC North was a very competitive conference this year. They did make the playoffs, even in that third place finish. They finished 7th. They received strong scores in their food dining program, weight room, training facilities. They upgraded some things last year. They had an underground parking facility. The one thing that's interesting to me is really strong scores for head coach Matt LaFleur and president and CEO Mark Murphy. If I'm not mistaken, and people can fact check me on this, I believe the Packers are the only team owned by the fans, and they nominate these players, Mark Murphy to be the president and CEO, and it's interesting that they're in the top 10. I can do a little bit of looking and see what they did last year. It seems they were third out of 32 teams last year, so they actually went down a little bit. But again, in the top 10, top 5, and they're the only team that's owned by the fans. San Francisco 49ers finished 8th. They went 6-11, 4th in the NFC West. They did not make the playoffs. Again, down year, a lot of injuries for where the San Francisco 49ers. The Detroit Lions come in 9th. They went 15-2, were first in the NFC North. Did make the playoffs, obviously. Had that really bad loss to the Commanders when everybody thought they'd be in the Super Bowl. So Dan Campbell, A+ rating, 2 years in a row. The only thing that I really see here score-wise, they want upgrades to lockers and the food program. Rounding out the top 10 are the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys went 7-10, third in the NFC East, no playoffs. They again had a lot of injuries, had a lot of things that didn't go their way this year. Is Dak Prescott the guy? But overall, I mean, they had some pretty decent scores. Treatment of families, A. Dining, B+. A for locker room, A- for weight room, A for head coach. An interesting score considering Mike McCarthy is no longer the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Ownership is a B. It's interesting to look at kind of the metrics and stuff like that, with 8.59 out of 10 Cowboys players in perceived willingness to invest in the facilities. They have state-of-the-art facilities. I mean, I know it's a few years old, but I mean, the Dallas Cowboys have always been the forefront of facilities for the players. That's 16 out of 32. Players feel that ownership slightly contributes to a positive team culture, 23rd out of 32. That's interesting as well. And the players feel that the ownership is committed to building a competitive team, makes 25 out of 32. Jerry Jones got some work to do. We all know the hard-headedness that Jerry Jones is, and how he's, again, at the forefront of the media and talking to all these different media outlets about all these different things. It seems like he's got some work to do with his players, at least the perceived notion of things. And I've always said this phrase, and again, this is going to date me, but perception is reality. It doesn't really matter what you're doing if people are perceiving you the opposite. So, he's got some work to do with that team across the board, I think, both talent-wise, payroll-wise, himself. I know it's a family-run business, so, I mean, does somebody else step up? But, I mean, even in some of the stuff that he was saying last year about being a general manager, he ain't stepping aside anytime soon. So, again, top 10 ranking, not bad, but, it's just interesting to me that ownership was 18th out of 32 teams, got a B rank. Again, I in school, I was okay with a B. But I don't think being kind of towards the middle or towards the back end, if you're going to make all these comments and everything else like that, you got to get the players that are in-house to believe in you. And you're an owner, you can do whatever you want. Obviously, I'm just some guy sitting in a loft, and it doesn't really matter what I think. But at the same point in time, I mean, that's how I look at it. So what are the people in that building looking at? What are they feeling? interesting rating, especially with the culture from head coach Mike McCarthy scoring so high and then basically letting him walk out the door. The new head coach continues that. I mean, it was his offensive corner, Schottenheimer. So we'll see what happens with that. Next, another surprise surge. The Commanders, Washington Commanders, 12-5, second in the NFC East. Obviously beat the Lions in the playoffs. Went to the NFC Championship game. Rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels finished last the last 2 years on this list. Finished dead last 2 years in a row, and now surged up to 11th. Number one head coach in the NFL rating-wise is Dan Quinn. They changed their food program from it was rated a D+ last year to a B+ this year. Family went from an F- to a B+. So more activities with the families, daycare on game day, a lot of changes that obviously we see what a good owner can do. Dan Snyder was not a good owner. And again, as we kind of look through a lot of the different things and the transition that they had this year, this shows that what a good ownership group can do. As we get further and further on, you're going to hear from, especially my opinion of my team, and kind of the scores that the ownership has gotten the last few years. But this one shows what a positive one can do. Locker room was an F, 29th out of 32 teams. So obviously some changes that need to happen there. Head coach, like I said, A+ first overall. Team travel ownership is 8th overall. Owner Josh Harris' average rating for perceived willingness to invest in facilities is 10th out of 32. Players feel that Harris significantly contributes to a positive team culture. It's 4 out of 32. Again, huge step for this franchise, which was a mess. And, some other media members will tell you how much better this season was to go through. Committed to building a competitive team, 4 out of 32. Great for the Washington Commanders to see that improvement. For 12th on the list, for a lot of you that don't know, I spent some time in my career in New Orleans. Really loved the time there. Really enjoyed the culture there. Experienced something completely different than what I was used to, being brought up in New England. New Orleans has a special place in my heart and always will. So they finished 12th. The things that I want to get into with them, there are some surprises here. The Saints ranked 12th, scoring above in most facility and staff-related categories, which is great. Their lowest rated area is the cafeteria, but a significant improvement is expected next year. So that's important. But you go down and look at food and dining, they're 31st out of 32. You are in one of the greatest food cities in the world, and you're providing the second to last rated cafeteria and food. So, like I said, it's important to note that the Saints new cafeteria was being built throughout the season and opened in December after the surveys were completed. But it shouldn't have even gotten to this point, considering where you're located. Rate the taste of their team's food 6.4 out of 10, 29th out of 32. Unacceptable. The rate of the freshness of food 6.68 out of 10, ranking 31st out of 32. Unacceptable. The players rate their dining area 5.67 out of 10, which is dead last. Again, just got improved and opened in December. The Saints are one of 2 teams that do not provide 3 meals a day throughout the week. Are you joking? I hope that changed too. You don't provide 3 meals for the players that are coming in early to work out, leaving late, doing film study, anything else like that. There's just not 3 meals provided. Now, I work for some employers that don't provide a meal sometimes, but this is an NFL franchise in the city of New Orleans, dead center of the city of New Orleans, around some of the greatest food that you'll ever partake in, and you can't even get your scores up that high. Again, I'm gonna see this interesting. This is something I'm gonna kind of bookmark and look at next year. The quality of the food should be far better. The freshness should be far better, and you should provide 3 meals a day for the players. This is interesting to me. This is an interesting score. 13th, Baltimore Ravens, 12-5, first in the AFC North. They made the playoffs. Still weren't able to get it done, getting past the Bills to get into even the AFC Championship game. Obviously, questions about Lamar Jackson here and there. We'll see kind of, again, how that goes forward. Again, for 13th, positive for owner, GM, head coach, which we expected, pretty much leading the scores for that team. 14th with the Chicago Bears, 5-12. 4th in the NFC North last year, no playoffs. Biggest negative was former head coach Matt Eberflus. He wasn't listening to players, apparently. Obviously, Matt Eberflus is no longer there. Ben Johnson's taken over. There's a lot of positive thoughts coming out from that Chicago area, at least from the fan base. Again, we'll see kind of what happens. But, even if he had made it through the season, which it was tough to let him do so with the way they were playing, he probably wasn't surviving. 15th was the Seattle Seahawks, 10-7. Second in the NFC West, no playoffs. Titans came in 16th. They are 3-14, have the number one overall pick. Finished dead last in the AFC South. Broncos, 10-7. Huge improvement. Bo Nix really stepped up and really kind of gave them a quarterback that they had been missing for quite a few years. They finished third in the AFC West. They did make the playoffs in that third place slot. Jaguars, 18th, 4-13. They were third in the AFC South. Didn't make the playoffs. They fell from 5th last year. They fell from 5th place to 18th. Major reason for that, the team ranks at the bottom of the league for its treatment of player families and the players' ratings of their head coach. Now, Doug Peterson no longer around, but when they asked what areas of improvement each of the three, it's making low ratings. Former head coach Doug Peterson, like I said, poor time efficiency, an unwillingness to listen, and a weak team culture. All issues that Liam Cohen has to fix. They have to fix that if they're going to have any relevance, because they've been very bad for quite a few. They did have some recently upgraded facilities, continued to show strong grades, as does owner Shad Khan. Be interesting to see kind of what Liam Cohen gets this year, especially after the whole back and forth of, was he going to get hired? Did he not want the job? Was he going to go back to the Buccaneers? 19th, Indianapolis Colts. They went 8-9, second in the AFC South. A little confusion with them, with Anthony Richardson and what he's going to become. The Giants in 20th place. They went 3-14. Obviously, a disaster of a year for them. Got rid of Daniel Jones. They dropped from 8th to 20th overall in these report cards. The Giants rated highest in strength coaches and head coach Brian Daboll. I'm glad they kept him around. I think he deserves an actual shot with a quarterback that he wants. And obviously, we saw from Hard Knocks last year some personnel decisions that were not his favorite. They added a family room during the stadium. They have a dated locker room, outdated hot and cold tubs, and they need better communication between the team and the player families. Players, what keeps them happy is their families. We're seeing that over and over again, so they have to continue to push for that. Again, that's the Giants. The Rams, 10-7, went first in the NFC West last year, made the playoffs. A lot of speculation if Matt Stafford was going to come back. He just restructured his deal to stay with the Rams. So you'll see Matt Stafford and Sean McVay being together again this season in LA. McVay has received high scores with the culture he's provided that team, that organization. The Rams moved from one temporary trailer facility to another temporary trailer facility this past year. Obviously, there's some permanent stuff going in, but not an ideal situation to be moving from one temporary solution to another temporary solution. Again, it'll be interesting to see where the scores go from there. 22nd place, your Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. 14-3, obviously won the Super Bowl, played an excellent Super Bowl against the Chiefs. No childcare on game day, which is one of the few teams, if not only team, that doesn't offer that anymore. Players want first-class seating. They sit and coach while the coaches sit in first class. They want staggered lunchtimes. I guess everybody in the facility comes to lunch at the same time. They say the whole facility itself doesn't have enough space, but they really enjoy kind of the head coach, Nick Sirianni. They appreciate that he listens to them. Looking at the head coach, they were A-. Actually rated 18th, which is mid of the table. They say he's moderately receptive to feedback, but they feel that he's very efficient with their time. So again, coming in during the week, knowing what you're supposed to be doing, and everything else like that. So again, some improvements for. He won the Super Bowl. What can I mean, you're in the middle of the road here. What are we at? 22nd out of 32 teams. So there's only 10 teams worse than you, and you won the Super Bowl. So again, interesting metric. A team that has 10 teams worse than them and 21 teams better than them won the Super Bowl. So again, this isn't everything, but it's a good kind of idea of where your teams are finishing. I mean, the Bills are the 23rd. They finished 13-4, first in the AFC East, made the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to get over the hump or not with the Chiefs in the AFC or the Ravens, but they seemed like it seemed like this was their year. Coaches are first in the class for the metrics. Players coach. Their one concern that hasn't been addressed is lack of training staff. They don't feel like they get enough attention as far as a training team. 24th, Cincinnati Bengals. They went 9-8, third in the AFC North, didn't make the playoffs. One of the more talented teams I've seen not make the playoffs in recent history. 25th, the Panthers, 5-12, third in the NFC North, didn't make the playoffs. David Temper has some things he probably has to work on as far as that. And then, interesting enough, the Kansas City Chiefs come in 26th. They went 15-2, finished first in the NFC North, got to the AFC Championship game again. Got to the Super Bowl again. They're up from 31st, so they were the second worst team last year. They finally got daycare for game days, full-time dietitian, which they hired from the New York Jets. We'll get into that a little bit later. Food went from an F to an A-, so dietitian obviously seemed to help out. Players want upgrades to their lockers. Seems like a lot of teams want bigger lockers. Obviously, there's limited space within these buildings that have already been built, but it seems like that is the one thing that players are really looking for. The players want upgrades to the locker room, like I said, and new home game hotel. I've worked in hotels. If this report came out and I saw that the hotel that the players stay at, or even for home games, is something they want improved on, I would be embarrassed. Very embarrassed to have that released, especially working for that hotel. Tampa Bay Buccaneers made the playoffs last year, going 10-7 and finishing first in the NFC South. Steelers, 28th, 10-7, second in the NFC North, made the playoffs again. The joke is the Steelers are always going to get 10 wins and lose in the first round of the playoffs. Tomlin gets high praise, gets high marks. That's not a surprise. Low score on individual training plans. I guess they don't really do a lot of that there. Art Rooney II, 28th out of 32 teams. Players feel that Rooney is committed to building a competitive team, a rank of 22 out of 32. The players feel that Rooney slightly contributes to a positive team culture, 25 out of 32. And Art Rooney II's average rating for perceived willingness to invest in the facilities is 6 out of 10, ranking him 30th out of 32. As one of those storied franchises, storied ownership, family-owned football teams, that's low. Very low. The next one's kind of fun for me to read out. It's also sad because my team finishes below them. 29th is the New York Jets. They went 5-12 last year. Third in the AFC East, didn't make the playoffs. Said goodbye to Aaron Rodgers. So where's Aaron Rodgers going to go? We're not quite sure yet, but he will not be a New York Jet. They're down from 21st from the previous year. Players feel rather than addressing concerns, players believed that management responded to feedback by making conditions worse. That is hilarious. Hilarious. That's what the players think. For example, after receiving low grades for their food program last year, players felt the team cut the food budget and did not retain their longtime dietitian. He went to the Kansas City Chiefs that got an A- now in their food program. He was the highest rated staff member. And your highest rated staff member, and you went, no thanks. Or didn't do enough to retain him when another team came looking. That's unbelievable. Unsurprisingly, when asked what needs the improvement, players overwhelmingly pointed to the food program, although they are complimentary in their new dietitian. So they did hire somebody new, and they do like that person. It's just not the previous person from that. It seems like a lot to live up to. You were the highest rated staff member, somebody poached you, and now you're replacing that person. So they've also cited perceived top leadership issues, with some describing issues as top-down problems. The Jets' ownership grade dropped from a B- to an F, with Woody Johnson receiving the league's lowest owner score for contributing to a positive team culture. He was in the news a lot last year about Aaron Rodgers, and we should have done this, we should have done that. Again, I'm just a guy sitting here with a microphone in front of my face, but that seems like that's a Woody Johnson problem. Stay out of the media. Let the team and new head coach, Aaron Glenn, do his thing. Put a GM in place. Don't try to be the guy. You're not the guy. You're not that guy, pal. Again, unsurprisingly, the Cleveland Browns are 30th, 3-14, fourth in the AFC North, didn't make the playoffs. 7 out of 10 players want a new locker room, which is 31st out of 32nd teams. They have an understaffed training room. They did have two hires after the surveys came out. This is, again, unsurprising and very much Cleveland Browns. They have a lack of culture, time management, and standards within the organization. That screams Cleveland Browns. That screams Cleveland Browns. Those things are unsurprising to me. It's just funny to read them from player surveys. And now we come to my favorite team, the New England Patriots. This is embarrassing. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail of the metrics themselves with them. First and foremost, 4-13, fourth in the AFCs, didn't make the playoffs. Had a disastrous year under Jared Mayo. I like Jared Mayo. I think he was done a little bit dirty getting fired. I'm more excited about Mike Vrabel coming in. I'm obviously more excited about Drake May in year 2. So I think that there's a lot of positives coming up here. They have the most cap room to spend, which probably contributed to some of these scores. But they were 29th last year, 31st this year. Embarrassing. Shouldn't be going down. Once you see these, you should be making whatever improvements you can. Now, if everybody's making improvements, obviously there are still teams that need to be at the bottom. It's just the way it is. $50 million facility next to Gillette Stadium being built, so a lot of these things are being handled already. Again, this is just for when this time frame came out. Family treatment was an F- last year. It's their biggest strength this year, which is great. I'm glad that Kraft got that right this year. And again, you can't fix everything all at once. I realize it's not feasible. He fixed the biggest issue this year. The key issues: the building needs renovation. There's a cramped weight room and outdated lockers. Again, the lockers thing keeps coming up for every team. Gillette Stadium, for as much as I look at it as a new stadium, it's not. It's 23 years old. They first started building it in 1999. It opened in 2002. There are things that you have to keep up with. There's some stuff in these reports that there are patches of the carpet missing in the locker room. The food and dining area for the New England Patriots, a C, 24 out of 32. Nutritionist, dietitian. 82% of the players report that they get an individualized nutrition plan, ranking the Patriots 19 out of 32. Players feel that the team position is moderately accessible, ranking 29 out of 32. Unacceptable. Robert Kraft has got to have a conversation with that individual, whoever the head of the dietitian program is. You can't feel like you're moderately accessible to the players. Locker room, C-, 22 out of 32. Players want a bigger locker room with larger, more functional lockers. One of the players says the current carpet looks dingy with pieces missing. Unacceptable. It's got to be fixed. Again, you're working on the family stuff. You're working on a training facility, locker room. You gotta get a new carpet at least. Come on. Training room, C-, 30 out of 32. 75% of the Patriot players feel that they have enough full-time trainers. 29 out of 32. 65% of the players feel they have enough full-time positions. 30th out of 32. 77% of the players feel they have enough hot tub space. 20 out of 32. 79% of the players feel they have enough cold tub space. 20th out of 32. So there's, again, you're kind of in that mid-range there. You're a little bit towards the back. Players do not believe the training room has the equipment they expect of an NFL training room. Absolutely embarrassing. I'm going to keep using that word. That is a joke that you don't have equipment for an NFL locker room. These things are what players are going to read and talk to each other about, and this is where you're going to lose out on free agents. You could offer the most money, a team could come in right behind you, and they could go, your training room sucks. That's got to be something that's fixed over this year. It has to. Training staff C+, weight room F, 32 out of 32. Players feel that the weight room equipment is below average, ranking 32 out of 32. The players feel they do not have enough space to train efficiently, ranking 31st out of 32. Again, how do you expect to cultivate a winning team with grades like that? Do you know why players came here during all the times that you're winning? A few reasons. Tom Brady was one of them. Tom Brady gave you a chance to win every single Sunday. Gave you a chance every season to win a Super Bowl. Bill Belichick gave you a chance to win every weekend. Gave you a chance to win a Super Bowl every season. You don't have those things anymore. You now have to provide for the players in different ways. Yes, Drake May could be the next great quarterback. You need time to figure that out. You have the money to spend to get better players. Nobody's going to come if your weight room is the worst in the league. You just did all this winning, and now you're going to go through a little rebuilding phase. Hopefully a little rebuilding phase. This could last for years. And yet somehow we still want to, again, these things need to be fixed. If you're the New England Patriots, as a season ticket holder, I don't want to read stuff like that. I don't want to read that the players feel like they can't use a weight room that's up to NFL standards. Team travel. This one was interesting to me because the Patriots have their own plane. Apparently, it's very out of date. 39% of the Patriots players report that having a comfortable amount of personal space on team flights, ranking 31st out of 32. Players feel like their team's travel schedule is not very efficient, a rank of 30 out of 32. Those things need to be addressed. Players want an upgraded team plane. Current plane is too small, there's no Wi-Fi available, and there are seats with ashtrays in the armrest. Again, whenever they bought the plane, let me see if I can figure that out. It says here the plane was built in 1991. So again, you purchased a plane that was used by American Airlines until 2016, and then you bought it. Again, you have a private jet. Great. It's out of date. And again, I realize going out and just buying private jets for your teams, remaking them, doing all this cost a lot of money. A lot more money than I'll ever see in my life. But it's a huge problem. You're 31st out of 32 teams in team travel, and you have a private plane. It's great. It's great to see it. It has the Patriots logo on it. It's been used to help people out. Kraft has been very good with paying for those things and doing those things. But at some point, you have to address it. The team facility coming up is going to take up this season's. It's supposed to open in 2026, so it may take up 2 seasons. But there's got to be some improvements somewhere there. Maybe putting new seats in. Again, I'd love to be able to back you and help you out with that. I just don't make that kind of money. But you can't be 31 out of 32 in team travel when you have a private jet. Head coach. 93% of the Patriots feel their former head coach was efficient with their time. I think it's a more overall positive feel with Mike Vrabel coming in. I don't know if Jared Mayo was necessarily ready quite yet. The players felt that Mayo was moderately receptive to locker room feedback. They were about 24 out of 32 teams with the head coach rankings. Ownership. And this is where it gets tough for me because I will always respect Robert Kraft and everything he did for this franchise, buying it, not moving it. Robert Kraft's average rating for perceived willingness to invest in the facilities is 6.15 out of 10. Which is 28 out of 32. Again, there's a facility being built, so hopefully that is something that is addressed in the next year or two. The players feel that Kraft slightly contributes to a positive team culture rating 30 out of 32. I realize he takes accountability. He took accountability for hiring Mayo and then firing him almost immediately. Again, perception is reality. You can't slightly contribute to a positive team culture. Players feel that Kraft is somewhat committed to building a competitive team, a rank of 30 out of 32. He was 29th out of 32 with all the ratings. You cannot seem like you don't want to invest in winning now that Brady and Belichick are gone. If you want to be the hero of New England and continue the winning ways and make all these statements, firing head coaches after 1 year, giving them that little of a chance, you have to invest in the team. Now you have the most money this offseason. That has to be spent, and it has to be spent well. Vrabel has said that. I'm sure he wouldn't have taken the job if you had come in and felt like you weren't going to pay anything, but that needs to be addressed. That has to be addressed. And now, last place is the Arizona Cardinals, 8-9, third in the AFC West, no playoffs. Arizona Cardinals finished at the bottom of this year's ranking card. Top concern for many of the players is the need for an updated, modernized, and expanded team facility. Nearly every space within the facility is described to be too small. Many players also highlighted non-construction related improvements that would enhance their workplace conditions, such as an upgraded food program with more variety, higher quality offerings, as well as pregame sideline passes for their families. Just going down while they're in last place, treatment of families D+, 29 out of 32. Food program, 30th out of 32, D-. They like the nutritionist and dietitian, only to a B. Locker rooms an F-, which is dead last. Training room, D-, dead last. Weight room, F, 31st out of 30 out of 32. Ownership, D- out of, which is 30th out of 32. Where's the F- here? Locker room, 50% of players feel they have enough space. 24% of the players believe the overall locker room size is adequate, ranking 32 out of 32 teams. Again, I don't know their facilities all that well, but that's bad. If they don't even have enough space. let alone anything else. The carpet's ripped, anything else like that. They don't even have enough space. Certainly some interesting rankings on there. I'm surprised to see the Chiefs where they are. I'm surprised to see the Eagles where they are. I'm surprised that a team like the Raiders are so high. Overall, it's just interesting to see where some teams are, to see some rankings that are in there. The ones that are pulling some of the teams down, like the Saints one, baffles me that their food was so bad. And then, obviously some disappointment as a Patriots fan to see where they are. They were 29th last year, 31st this year. You're going in the wrong direction. I'm hoping Vrabel and the new training facility changes a lot of that. But with that, we're going to head into a little bit of the NFL Combine and mock drafts and everything else. So far, defensive linemen and defensive backs have gone so far. There was actually a lot of names that are skipping some of these drills. So Travis Hunter is going to skip drills. Obviously, the dual threat out of Colorado. He will compete at his pro day. Abdul Carter, who's supposed to be a number one overall draft pick type player, is not competing now. He had an injury in the college football playoff against Boise State. So that I can see he'll be at his pro day. Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State. Shedeur Sanders, quarterback from Colorado, not competing. Taylor Warren, tight end from Penn State. There's like a list of like 5 Michigan players that are not competing during the combine, but they are going to be at their pro day. Will Johnson, the defensive back, and Mason Graham, supposed to be one of the first defensive tackle off the board, not competing. Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami, also not competing. Taking a look at a few mock drafts, Mel Kiper Jr. from ESPN, Titans, Abdul Carter first, Browns, Cam Ward, the quarterback from Miami, second. The Giants, Travis Hunter out of Colorado, third. The Patriots, almost in all of the mock drafts I've seen so far, are taking Will Campbell, the offensive tackle from LSU. My Patriots take with the draft is, if you are going to go offensive lineman first in that 4th overall pick or trade down and get an offensive lineman, then you need to go heavy with wide receivers and free agency. You got to find some people for Drake May to throw to. But offensive tackle is going to be huge. Will Campbell is supposed to be like a generational tackle talent. And so for you to have him protect Drake May is a good step. Jaguars, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network has the exact same top 5. Again, it seems like a pretty safe kind of look at the top 5. Obviously, there's going to be some trades that are not accounted for. You're going just strictly off of the picks. But if I'm the Patriots, Travis Hunter, Will Campbell, Tita McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, I think those are your picks in that kind of spot. I've seen one where McMillan is down to 19th in a mock draft. This one is Daniel Jeremiah's. So that's a huge difference from what I've seen him going in the top 10. If you're going to trade down Calvin Banks, the tackle from Texas, I wouldn't mind Mason Graham to put on that front line if you're going to really look at defensive line first. And I think if Abdul Carter drops to you, that's at 4, that's something you really have to consider as well. Those are the ones I would consider kind of in that space for the New England Patriots to at least start their improvement. I think they need linebackers. I think they need some defensive backs. I would love to see a tight end get drafted at some point, just simply because you have one of them becoming a free agent. I believe Austin Hooper's a free agent again. That's kind of the improvements I want to see via the draft, at least that first pick. Some general news from around the league. DeMarcus Lawrence staying with the Cowboys would be a glorious thing, but the ball is in their court. So he's basically told them that for him to stay, they need to make some improvements to the contract. Aaron Rodgers among QB options for the Giants now that Matt Stafford is staying in LA with the Rams. The Rams also just signed Alaric Jackson, their offensive tackle, to 3 years, $57 million. I could use a loan. Again, Matt Stafford heading back to the Rams. And then Texas wide receiver Isaiah Bond says he'll break Xavier Worthy's combine 40-yard dash record. So that's something to keep an eye on. Again, I like the 40-yard dash. I understand the meaning behind it and how quick somebody can be. But to me, it's very rarely that you're running 40 yards untouched. You have to get out in the open nowadays. Everybody's really fast from every different position. We had 2 defensive linemen run about 4 or 5 40s. I'm pretty sure that myself and two of my friends at Gillette Stadium during the Patriots London game ran a 40-yard dash. None of us got below 7 seconds, and I'm pretty sure I ripped both of my hamstrings trying to do it. So I can respect that a defensive lineman weighing probably what I weigh and running a 4.540 is unbelievable, outrageous. I've talked a lot of NFL today. I've gone over a lot of NFL player grades, showing the interesting metrics in which teams can get feedback from their players, and is now public knowledge to read on the NFLPA website. I've talked briefly about the Combine, who wasn't competing, that NFL draft where I would like to see the Patriots do some stuff, and what the top five is kind of going to look like, at least for right now, with pro days coming up towards the mid to end of March. You're going to see some movement there as well. I've covered a lot of the NFL today, a lot, and it was a lot of fun. And hopefully when we get closer to the draft, we have another one kind of looking at the draft and where I think teams are going to go. I'm going to do one show where it's just where I think they're going to go based upon who's picking where, if any trades have happened. And then it's, Loftside Bantr will actually be going to the NFL draft at Gillette Stadium. And I say the draft of the Patriots draft party. And so hopefully we'll be able to talk to some former players and get some feedback on, what they think now of the Patriots and where they need to head and what they need to do to turn things around. After all that NFL talk today, I'm going to wish you all adieu. Have a good morning, good evening, good night, wherever it is, whatever time it is where you are. And we'll see you next time here on Loftside Bantr.